Well, today we're in Batavia, New York, the county seat of Genesee County, and we're all proud Western New Yorkers. Behind us we have a number of folks who have turned out to support the next governor of New York State, Lee Zeldin, Congressman Zeldin. I know Lee very, very well, having worked in the state legislature with him, and have had a continual relationship with him in terms of his representation in Congress. He's given up a very safe seat in Congress about a year and a half ago to run for the state of New York governor for many, many reasons. And those reasons have been exacerbated during the past 6 to 8 months. The departure of one governor, the ascension of another governor who in essence is the same individual, just in different garb, if you will. So we're very happy to have Congressman Zeldin here. The state of New York is facing a myriad of issues, from inflation, the toughest in 40 years for our people. We have gas prices to the roof. We have food and other household necessities that have gone through the roof. We have crime that's rampant. But he's going to talk about some of these issues today, and I'm very proud to introduce to all of you the next governor of the state of New York, Congressman Lee Zeldin.
Steve Hawley, everybody, he does a great job, well respected by his colleagues in Albany. He's somebody who's a strong voice for this entire region, and quite frankly, he's not even beginning to tap into the influence that he will be able to exert on behalf of his constituents, on behalf of this region, come January, because we need a balance of power in Albany, and once we have it, that means that assemblymen and senators like Steve Hawley are going to be able to have that voice at the table for their constituents in a way that you don't experience with one-party Democratic rule as we have right now. It's supermajorities in the Assembly and Senate, and 3 persons in a room deciding what the state budget's going to be. Even members of the Democratic Party in the Senate and Assembly kind of in the dark, looking for the media to tell them what's going to happen in the middle of the night on some budget that they're about to pass. So we really have to restore balance to Albany. It's not just about political balance, it's also geographic balance. I want all New Yorkers to feel like they have a voice and representation again in our state capital. And it doesn't matter which of the 62 counties you come from, what region of this state you come from, everybody should feel like they have a voice that is being heard. That's not the case right now. We have 62 counties in many respects. I mean, you could say that 4 of the 62 counties control everything. There's some issues where some influence on a particular day might be exerted. We saw it with the Buffalo Bills deal. But process-wise, I mean, in the 11th hour, with questions that in many respects still haven't been answered, you have members of the state legislature getting just few details late in the process. So it's about all New Yorkers having a government to be proud of. And really, it doesn't require an executive order or legislation to be able to make a positive impact here on day one. Bringing integrity to the position, having a government that you don't have to be ashamed of, embarrassed by. We have our 3rd lieutenant governor now in less than a year. And instead of Kathy Hochul, who picked somebody who was busy running from the law, we went out and found Allison Esposito, who made a career enforcing the law. Instead of having an Albany that stabs law enforcement in the back and turns streets over from criminals to criminals, from law-abiding citizens, slapping handcuffs on the justice system, instead of putting handcuffs on criminals, we can have an Albany that we can be proud of, that is unapologetically backing the blue again. On day one, as soon as I get sworn into office, the first thing that I am going to do, with the constitutional authority that the governor of the state of New York has, I'm going to fire the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. First thing. But right after that, we're going to get to work in making sure that any COVID mandates that are still in place are gone. Thirdly, we still need accountability, transparency, and justice regarding Andrew Cuomo's deadly nursing home order and cover-up. I will appoint a special prosecutor to investigate and prosecute any crimes related to the deadly nursing home order and cover-up. There are ways that we can make a positive impact right out of the gate. Mandates, though, are earned. Some people think you win an election, you have a mandate to do whatever you want with regards to anything. It doesn't work like that. So we are out here talking about our ideas so that the mandate is earned on the issues. We are talking about the need to repeal cashless bail. We're not going to just suddenly be dropping this idea after an election. We're talking about it every day wherever we go. I also believe that the state needs to reverse the ban that exists on the safe extraction of natural gas. We should be tapping into this resource, especially in places like the Southern Tier, but there are these other counties when you go away from the Southern Tier that want to be able to tap into this resource too. There are applications for pipelines that are collecting dust in Albany being delayed, denied, that instead should be getting approved. And meanwhile, instead of doing the right thing, one party rule in Albany, for their next act, they want to ban all gas hookups on new construction statewide. They've set climate change, Green New Deal dates, targets that are unobtainable. We could agree that something might be a laudable goal, but you have to come with a plan of how to achieve it. And quite frankly, the supply does not exist to achieve what they're setting out for. You're going to cause tremendous amount of pain for people who can least afford it. We should enact the greatest, the largest tax cut in the history of the state. We have to bring spending under control. We have to respect freedom. We have to protect the First Amendment rights of New Yorkers, the Second Amendment rights of New Yorkers. There was a great decision issued by the United States Supreme Court yesterday to overturn New York's unconstitutional concealed carry law. I believe that New York should also overturn the unconstitutional SAFE Act as well. Protecting the rights of law-abiding New Yorkers is one that should bring all of us together. Suddenly, this governor is out there advocating against the rights of law-abiding New Yorkers. This same governor who, when she was a member of Congress, was an A-rated, NRA-endorsed member of Congress and proud of it. She made a name for herself by opposing driver's licenses for people who weren't legally in the country. And then all of a sudden, she becomes a statewide elected official and she's trying to win a Democratic Party primary, and she's evolved on this. She's evolved on that. She's evolved on this and she's evolved on that. But people out here in this region know her best, and they know that the Kathy Hochul who she's trying to be today isn't the Kathy Hochul she's always been in the past. She's in over her head. She's not up for this job. She is pandering to tax and spend liberal pro-criminal Democrats who are rolling her, and she cares more about getting reelected than she does about saving the state. That's why everyone is here during in-person early voting, which ends this Sunday. That's why we are getting the message out to every Republican who we know, whether it's on social media or emails or texts or phone calls, to make sure that they come out in the Tuesday, June 28th, Republican primary for governor. I am not in this race to come in second. Everyone who's here understands that losing is not an option. Winning is the only option. We will fire Kathy Hochul this November. We will restore balance and common sense to Albany. We will make sure that members of the state legislature like Steve Hawley have a bigger seat than ever before at that table to bring home what is necessary to save New York, to reverse the attacks on freedom, on wallets, on safety, on the quality of our kids' education. So grateful for everybody who is participating in this process. This is our second stop of the day. We have many throughout the day. We just came here from Erie County. We're on our way to Monroe County. We'll be in Onondaga County next, later on this evening. We're not going to rest. And I ask everybody out there to continue fighting for what you know with clear purpose is an opportunity. It's a moment. It's a critical fight. It's a battle for the heart and soul of our country and our state, and none of us will end up having to go to sleep on November 8th upset that we should have tried a little bit harder. We are going to do everything in our power in all 62 counties. No county's too large, no county is too small, all in, taking nothing for granted. We will save our state. We will restore it to glory. And Steve Hawley and everyone else from this region will have a big smile on their face knowing that we will have done our part to save our state. Thank you so much for coming out. Sure, go ahead.
So first of all, Lee, thanks for visiting Batavia again. As Steve knows, it's the most important city in Western New York. I do have a couple of tough questions for you. First of all, you talked about cutting taxes. When I look at what I pay in taxes, what I pay to the state income tax is not terribly onerous. What I pay for the city or the county isn't onerous. The education tax bill I get every year is just outrageous, and I'm wondering what you will do to cut out of control education spending.
Well, first off, property taxes being the area that most New Yorkers are complaining about the most. Right now, many New Yorkers are getting that check to their house, coming with a note. This is a gift from Kathy Hochul. By the way, coincidentally, she happens to be running in a primary this upcoming Tuesday. It has nothing to do with it, Steve. Absolutely nothing to do with it. I have a problem with the way that Albany puts their hand in your pocket and then gives you your money back and then expects you to say thank you on top of it. In some cases, they take money out of your pocket and they don't give it to you back, and that's even worse. We need to level the playing field. We're picking winners and losers in business. Based on your political calculations, you can score grants. It's wrong. And it's also, in many respects, driving business and industry out of New York. If you want to be able to cut spending and lower taxes, you have to make New York more business friendly. You have to make the state agencies more business friendly. We have to cut taxes across the board, and we have to realize that some people who can afford to pay more in taxes, just because they can afford to pay more in taxes, doesn't mean that they will actually stay here to pay those taxes. I remember it was the end of March, last week of March of 2021. In Albany, they were enacting a multi-billion-dollar fund called the Excluded Workers Fund for people who weren't legally in this state. And to help pay for it, they raised income tax rates for the wealthiest New Yorkers. So I happened to be down in South Florida when that was happening, against the resistance, of course, of Steve Hawley. And I was talking to someone who was explaining, by the way, he probably makes at least hundreds of millions of dollars a year in the city, in New York City. He called his accountant, he called his attorney, that was his breaking point. They were just trying to raise his taxes a little bit.
Fair share.
And to pay their fair share. These geniuses up in Albany said, well, taxes have no effect on behavior. People aren't leaving the state. We hear the stories of seniors on fixed incomes who can't afford to stay. We hear the stories of young people who have a decision to make of having their first kid inside of their mom and dad's house, or they could go buy their own home in some other state chasing opportunities elsewhere. But there's also wealthy New Yorkers who you can make your argument to the 8 times a week. You could do it twice on Sunday. You can do it till you're tired and no one else is left listening to you. The fact is that people who can afford to pay more are hitting their breaking point as well. On the school tax front, the unfunded mandates that come from Albany contribute to it. Schools pay a whole lot of money in unfunded mandates. If the state has that good of an idea, pay for it. Unfunded mandates is a key part of this. I believe as I support school choice. We have to understand that not every school is the same. We have some great schools in the state of New York. We have some poor performing schools. Competition is good. And we shouldn't have kids stuck in poor performing schools, which, while you might have the greatest amount of pride in your local school district right here, I will tell you from my multiple visits to the community where Top's supermarket is in Buffalo, they're talking about outcomes and the attendance rates and graduation rates and the poor performance on school and math and reading and in those public schools. And meanwhile, they are blocking out, because of the teachers union, they're blocking out school choice and other alternatives that truly are available to break the cycle of multi-generational poverty, and that helps improve the efficiency in how schools are being run. This is all part of it because school districts rely on multiple sources. They rely on aid from Albany. They rely on aid from property taxes. We need to make schools more efficient, tackle unfunded mandates, create more jobs, create more opportunity, provide more competition. And all of this ends up lifting up the quality of education inside of our schools, and it also helps in driving down the cost and sharing the burden. When you have a new company moving into your community to pay property taxes, that's less taxes that everybody else has to pay. When that big company decides to move to another state where they go belly up, that's a higher burden for everyone else to have to pay. So supporting upstate manufacturing, upstate job growth, increased investment in broadband, opposing the overtime rules that are being pushed through right now for agriculture, it all adds up towards improving the climate for education and for taxpayers.
So do you support vouchers then?
I support educational savings accounts, tax credits for school choice, school vouchers, lifting the caps on charter schools. I am grateful for our teachers. My mother's a retired teacher. By the way, I am most grateful for the teacher who signs up for the toughest school assignment in the state of New York, in the worst performing school. Because thank God you have a teacher who is willing to take on that assignment. We have amazing teachers in the state of New York. Unfortunately, you have some people who run teachers' unions, especially at the higher levels, and they view themselves as really Democratic operatives, and they care about getting their invitation in the next Democratic National Convention and being a delegate and having their power and their perks. And I have found a lot of support around the state from the grassroots of teachers. And by the way, supporting the grassroots of teachers means that no teacher anywhere in the state of New York should be fired for what is a personal decision of whether or not to get the COVID shot. If you want to get it, get it. If you don't want to get it, don't get it. But don't get it because Kathy Hochul called on you to be her apostle. Every New Yorker who has been fired for refusing to get the COVID shot should still have their job. They should get their jobs back with back pay. And inside of some parts of New York, that meant that firefighters, that law enforcement, that healthcare workers, that teachers have been put out of work. And on top of it, bonus point, we got to recognize natural immunity in this state. Other countries do it. Researchers, scientists, experts, data from Johns Hopkins and other places inside of the United States of America recognize that natural immunity is a thing. For someone to get COVID on the front lines of being able to fight an outbreak inside of a medical facility, and then 3 weeks later being put out of work because they don't want to get the shot, they just got off being positive for COVID, they all should get their jobs back with back pay.
So, as we've kind of discussed this before when you were visited, downstate, the path to victory is through downstate, controlled by progressives. How does somebody who isn't pro-choice, doesn't support gun regulation, doesn't support the progressive agenda, has the path to victory in New York without being able to pick up downstate voters?
I'm pro-life, I'm pro-Second Amendment, and I strongly oppose the far-left progressive agenda taking over Albany. Now, if you want to really get to the heart of where New Yorkers are across this state, even people who consider themselves to be pro-choice are against New York's law for late-term partial birth abortion. They are against non-doctors performing abortion. They are for parental consent. They are for informed consent. They want to promote adoption more. With regards to the Second Amendment, Kathy Hochul, she's as big of a hypocrite as it gets, double standards, and a walking identity crisis. She is someone who would go to the Hamburg Fairgrounds gun show and spend hours there, going table to table, bragging about her NRA endorsement until she became a statewide elected official. Kirsten Gillibrand did the same thing as a member of Congress when she became a United States Senator statewide. If you want to get to the heart of where New Yorkers are, New Yorkers support the rights of law-abiding neighbors. The issue is with criminals. The issue is with people who are looking to break laws and hurt others. And Second Amendment supporters, just like the strictest gun control advocates, we're all on the same page in wanting to make sure that people don't get hurt. When we advocate against gun-free zones, it's because we don't want to see a location like a school or a mall or elsewhere turn into a target. We see people being protected by law-abiding, trained, pro-Second Amendment, armed school resource officers or law enforcement or others who want to safely and securely carry to protect the safety of themselves and others. You talk about the far left progressive agenda, and this is actually the one of the three that you mentioned that I hear the most about inside of blue areas where they support what we're doing. They want to feel safe and secure on their streets. They want to be able to afford to survive in New York. They care about their son and daughter's education that transcends party loyalty, even if they are a liberal, loyal Democrat. I have seen so much support coming from even inside of the boroughs of New York City. When you're talking to an Asian American voter in Flushing, Queens, about crime and public safety and education, you are earning their support, their trust easily because of how much the Democrats have turned on them as one of their own gets thrown in front of an oncoming subway car and gets killed, as one of their own gets stabbed to death in their apartment in Lower Manhattan, one of them gets beaten to death on the streets of New York City with a hammer. We're on the right side of the issues that matter most to New Yorkers. And the last point, which is a good question, is that this upstate versus downstate description of Albany is not the best way to describe reality, because in many respects it's 58 counties concerned about 4 counties. You talk to residents of Staten Island, that's actually part of New York City, and they're more upset about Bill de Blasio and AOC and their friends and their policies than people who are in Genesee County. You talk to people in Suffolk County, and they're more concerned about what the far left city council is doing or what Democrats in Albany are passing with congestion pricing. You look policy to policy, the impacts of the far left policies have resulted in what is a divide of 58 counties and 4 counties. It's not an upstate downstate thing because so many people who live in this region have amazing, great allies and advocates partnering with residents from Rockland and Putnam and Suffolk and Nassau and Richmond County and other counties, all sharing the same concerns that the far left one-party rule, 3 persons in a room, is not best representing where they live, their home, their family, and it's contributing to their breaking point.
I have a question about just an hour ago, Roe versus Wade was knocked down in the Supreme Court, and then yesterday we had the conceal and carry in the Supreme Court. Tell me, what are your thoughts on these 2 back-to-back?
The last 24 hours have been a great 24 hours for the good guys. I feel like the decision that was issued yesterday from the Supreme Court was right and just and necessary and correct. I signed on to the amicus brief in support of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association's case. I believe the Supreme Court made the right decision. The New York State concealed carry law was wrong. These are not rights for Kathy Hochul and Democrats in Albany to just give and take away at whim, at will to New Yorkers. These are rights that shall not be infringed. They are not just part of our Second Amendment to our Constitution, but these are God-given rights that are there for a reason. And unfortunately, some politicians are seeking to target law-abiding New Yorkers. And one of the best questions you can ask them, which doesn't often get asked enough, is, but why target the law-abiding New Yorker? And then they give their answer. And if they don't answer your question, you have a great follow-up question. But why target the law-abiding New Yorker? The decision today issued in a Dobbs case was a victory for life, for family. It was a victory for the Constitution. It was a victory for federalism. It was the correct decision. And as I pointed out earlier, there is much more of a natural, real alliance in this state. There's more that unites us than divides us on this issue. Because even though I'm pro-life, and I got a chance to experience life in the second trimester when my daughters were born 14 and a half weeks early. And it was absolutely beautiful. And thank God they had the ability to be born, to survive, to thrive, and they're doing great. And just this week, they finished the 10th grade. There's a natural alliance with people who consider themselves to be pro-choice because of just how far they have gone up in Albany with their one-party rule, all the way to the point of legalizing late-term partial birth abortion and non-doctors performing abortion, not doing enough to promote adoption, not doing enough to advance parental consent and informed consent, and those are just a handful of the examples of how there's far more that unites us than divides us, even though some people who are pro-abortion, I mean, they're out there passionately fighting for more abortion, taking it so far that they've even alienated many people who consider themselves to be pro-choice. So, thank you.
Thank you for your question. You guys
Yep.
want to line up for a photo with the bus?
I think they're all too shy.